You're listening to this podcast, so I know you've got a curious mind. Here's a helpful fact you might not know yet. Drivers who switch and save with Progressive save over $900 on average. Pop over to Progressive.com, answer some questions, and you'll get a quick quote with discounts that are easy to come by. In fact, 99% of their auto customers earn at least one discount. Visit Progressive.com and see if you can enjoy a little cash back. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. National average 12-month savings of $946 by new customers surveyed who saved with Progressive between June 2024 and May 2025. Potential savings will vary.
A few weeks ago.
I won't get into the politics of it. People served honorably. They served well. They served successfully.
Vietnam veteran Dave Hill visited the Coolidge National Medal of Honor Heritage Center in downtown Chattanooga, Tennessee. Dave came to Chattanooga to talk about his old friend, Vietnam War Cobra helicopter pilot Larry Taylor. Dave Hill is the last living survivor from a four-man LRP team who Captain Taylor rescued in the combat action that would earn Taylor the Medal of Honor 56 years after that combat action.
Taylor said, I think I can get him out of there. He said, you don't have a transport helicopter, you don't have a cabin, you got a cockpit for you and your co-pilot, no place for them to ride, and besides, you're not designed for that mission. Well, Larry Taylor figured his aircraft was flyable, and that was all he needed.
Today on the show, a few moments from Dave Hill's speech. My name is Josh Roe, and this is Tomorrowtown, Tennessee.
I would like to talk a little more about Vietnam. I served there from 67 to late 68. I had the occasion to meet some very brave people, a lot of them unrecognized. Finally, after 56 years, one of the very bravest was recognized, Captain Taylor. So for all those 2.7 million Americans that served in uniform in Vietnam, they've all got their own individual and unique story. I'm not going to tell one of those stories today. America's involvement in Vietnam started after the French lost in 1954. We actually worked with Ho Chi Minh and company during World War II fighting the Japanese. French tried to hold on to their colonies, they lost. In 54, we sent in advisors. They called them a MAG back then, Military Advisory something or other. Comes out MAAG. At any rate, that was our role in Vietnam for at least a decade. 1964, the Gulf of Tonkin incident occurred, and we started the buildup. We had advisors, special forces primarily, but also what they call MACV, Military Assistance Command Vietnam advisors. And they were all the way down to company, battalion, brigade, division levels with supporting the South Vietnamese soldiers, known as the ARVNs, Army Republic of Vietnam. Well, that wasn't enough. They were getting defeated battle after battle. And President Johnson decided we were going to change course. Ultimately, whether people agree or don't agree really doesn't matter. I won't get into the politics of it. People served honorably, they served well, and they served successfully. Ultimately, we had to leave there. 8 bloody years later, 58,220 casualties, our active part of the war was over. So we kind of snuck into it, kind of like a LRP. And sometimes you get into it and it's hard to get out. So it's very analogous to our situation in 1968. On 3rd of March, 1965, the 9th Expeditionary Brigade, 3,300 men of the U.S. Marines 3rd Division, came ashore in Da Nang on Red Beach. Landed without a lot of fanfare. It was not on a hostile shore, but it soon became hostile. The Marines took up security positions to protect Da Nang Air Base. They eventually started expanding that security position with small offensive operations. May of 1965, the Army's 173rd Airborne Brigade and the 1st Brigade of the 101st Airborne Division came into the South and into the Central Highlands. Air Force, Navy buildup, Navy primarily supporting the operations from offshore to a place called Yankee Station in the South China Sea. They're also land-based. So also in March, Air Force, based in Thailand largely, Marine Corps and Navy pilots took the war to the enemy, both in South Vietnam and in North Vietnam. So the period that we call the Big Unit War had started in earnest. And there was no looking back from that point onward. Later in the year, the 1st Cavalry Division, 1st Infantry Division came in, then the 4th, the 25th, the 9th, and eventually the Marical Division. Quite a buildup, eventually reaching about 550,000 people. As I said, everybody had their own story. Let me tell you a little story about a gentleman, native of Chattanooga. Grew up in the St. Elmo area. Last lived in Chattanooga, actually at Signal Mountain. Captain Larry Taylor. I'll tell you how we met, where, and under what circumstances. On the night of 18 June 1968, our 4-man reconnaissance team, the Rangers, LRPs, we had started off as LRRP, but we dropped the R for reconnaissance because we moved more into direct contact ambushes, hopefully at a long distance through binoculars or a night vision scope with artillery rather than up close and personal. That was our preference. But we were highly trained, very specialized, had very successful doctrine and tactics, trained hard. Whenever we were not on a mission, we were doing what we call immediate action drills. Start with dry fire and then move into the live fire range. What do you do? Contact front, back, left, and right. You can't think about it, you got to react. And so practice, practice, practice. Even did PT, almost unheard of in Vietnam. We ran because our first sergeant said, it's a war. I know I'm going to lose some of you fellas, but I'm not going to lose you because you can't keep up because you're out of shape. Now, if you're in a line infantry unit, you didn't need PT. You got it every single day you're out there. But we needed, I'll call it burst of speed when you're carrying a heavy rucksack and a lot of ammunition, a lot of weapons. The mission that night was to be a short range one. We were only going to go 3,000 or 4,000 kilometers, 3,000 or 4,000 meters from our mission launch site. So we took off in the early afternoon. We were loaded for bear. We were all carrying anywhere from 500 to 600 rounds for our rifles. I was carrying a dozen hand grenades, and each of us carried a Claymore mine, some of us two. The radio man had an even bigger load. He had his 25-pound PRC 25 radio on his back in addition to everything else. Grenadier normally carries in the infantry about 40 rounds of high explosive rounds. Billy Kahn, our grenadier that night, was carrying 55 on his own, and each of us carried another 5 for him in our rucksacks. So we're heavy on ammo, heavy on ordnance, and water, and light on food. We weren't going to be out that long. We proceeded from our launch site, which is what we call a rough puff compound, regional forces, popular forces. They're kind of the militia of the South Vietnam Army. And we proceeded down to our location, stayed in the wood line until it got full dark. Wide open terrain, just vast acres and acres of rice paddies. So with night vision scope, we scoped out what we expected to be what we call our overwatch or ambush position. Moved out from the wood lines, maybe 150, 200 meters, and we stopped. Bob Elsner, my team leader from New York City. Our radio man, Gerald Patty, was right up the street here in Maryville, Tennessee, and Billy Kahn, Old Mystic, Connecticut, and myself from California. So we were a countrywide team. Elsner stopped, and he passed it on down the line, and of course we all stopped. He looked through his starlight scope, and though it was didn't have the distance we normally would on a well moonlit night, he finally discovered we'd walked in basically a horseshoe-shaped staging area of the enemy. We decided we were, of course, going to get back out of there if we could, sneak back out. But we couldn't because another couple of squads had come in between us and the wood line. Now, they didn't know we were there yet. They'd soon find out because of Larry Taylor. So we called for help. We were fortunate. We were basically had a natural parapet protected us as long as we stayed what we called indefilade, couldn't be hit by direct fire. We were at a confluence of several water buffalo paths, so it gave us good protection. So we hunkered down. That's where we're going to make our stand because we're looking at 70, 80, 90 guys, and we were 4. Call for help. Well, that help was Captain Larry Taylor, then a lieutenant, first lieutenant. And he was a busy guy that night. He was the aircraft commander of his own AH-1G Cobra, which you'll see inside, an exact replica of it. He was a wing leader, so he was in charge of his wingman's aircraft also, another Cobra. They were expecting a Huey, what we call a slick, transport helicopter. So he was also the mission commander, so the whole shooting match. What he got scrambled out of their base camp at Fuloy, which is north of us, about 40 kilometers. They had to get in that aircraft, be off the ground, and on their way to the contact point within 5 minutes. We first saw his lights. He was about 2 kilometers behind us. He's running his navigation lights. Just as a sign of encouragement, he knew we were looking for him. And then we vectored him into us. Asked us the situation, and Elsner, very plain speaking, and I won't mention some of the words, made it clear that we were in deep kimchi. And so we need your help. And so he said, okay, I need to know exactly where you are. And he said, okay, you got anything marked with us? He said, yes, we do. We got star cluster flares. And they're not the parachute illumination type flares. They're for marking you so you can shoot them up through triple canopy jungle. More like a Roman candle than anything else. He said, well, fire that out, and we're down here to the south. Now we're going to make a run both sides of you, east and west of you, on either side of you. So he said, go. We hit the bottom. It looks like a road fusing. All hell broke loose. We were no longer undiscovered, but help was there. Unlike General Custer, we had 2 guys that could put smoke on wherever it needed to be, all around us. Well, they proceeded to put basically a ring of steel around us for the next half hour. Every time a group of the enemy would try to, for those of you who are in the infantry, remember fire and maneuver. One group keeps us pinned down while the other guys come up on us. Every time they would get together and organize for that type of maneuver, they would blow them up. And so we were still all fine. The ships had been hit, they were still flyable. But only in the movies do you have an endless, bottomless magazine or belts of ammunition or bombs. In real life, you run out of fuel, you run out of ammunition, you run out of rockets, and that's what was happening. About that time, Taylor let his unit know that they were almost out of rockets and minigun, almost out of fuel, and he thought he had a solution to the problem. We were still surrounded, still needed their help, but we weren't going to survive without having their support and their deadly fire keeping the enemy at bay. So he called headquarters. Some colonel, pretty high-ranking guy, probably shouldn't have been on the radio. I'm quite sure he was not a troop commander. He told Taylor, you can't go in there. Taylor said, I think I can get him out of there. He said, you don't have a transport helicopter. You don't have a cabin. You got a cockpit for you and your co-pilot. No place for them to ride. And besides, you're not designed for that mission. Well, Larry Taylor figured his aircraft was flyable, and that was all he needed. What had been an attack helicopter could now be a transport helicopter. If he figured if he could get us on the ground and us jump on it anywhere we could latch on, he could get us out of there. So he told us, I'm going to do it. And they said, no, you're ordered not to do that. You got to abort, rearm, and refuel, which is a normal practice when you're all out of ordnance and fuel. But it wasn't a normal circumstance. Larry wasn't a normal commander, a normal aviator. He was a guy that what we now call thought outside the box. So one final word from the rear, and then Larry just switched to alternate frequency. He told my team leader, come up on push 2. He and Elsner had an alternate channel, and apparently nobody in the rear back in the Tactical Operations Center knew that. So he cut them out of the fight. They weren't useful, they weren't helpful, and they were hindering him, and he didn't need that racket. And they were also, for those of you familiar with radio communications, they were stepping on our transmissions. They had a more powerful transmitter than the FM radio we carried on our back. So just critically important for Taylor to talk to our team leader. They couldn't talk. They got overwhelmed by the bigger radios. So Taylor told Elsner, he said, okay, gonna hit the east side with the rounds we got left. I'm gonna hit the west side. Well, Taylor, unbeknownst to us by that time, was also totally out of rockets and minigun ammunition. So in order to bring off his ruse, he flew off to the west, flashing his landing lights, low level. Normally a helicopter, a gunship, starts their attack runs about 1,500 feet. They have to level off around 1,000 feet. Well, it was nighttime. He had a fire in the village. We'd taken fire out there. Our return fire had started a fire in they were thatch roofed huts. So he had the targets backlit. He was all night long was coming over us 25, 30 feet. His co-pilot operated the miniguns. He was putting rounds within 10 meters of us. We needed help, and we needed it very close. So Taylor's out of ammunition. He's flashing his landing lights, making them look like they were machine guns. Carried it off one time, and then he started taking hits. Then he disappeared in the dark. But his instruction to us had been, when we start our attack run here, you got any claymores? He said, yeah, we got 4 left. So directional mines, claymore mines, put out 4 of them. Will put out almost 3,000 rounds, moving at 4,000 feet per second in a big arc. He said, we'll blow 2 of them to the northeast and 2 of them to the southeast. The river is straight east of us, so all we had to do is make a half turn, and we're facing 135 degrees, which is southeast. Larry was thinking, make it as simple as possible. Also, the enemy knew our most likely point or direction of egress would be towards the river. So he made his runs. We blew the claymores. We just needed a little gap in there for just a little while. We ran out of there, 100 meters where he wanted us to meet. And as Larry said, we ended up in the same hole in the rice paddy at the same time. I got out there, I was rear security, so I was the last guy to arrive. And when I did, the team leader said, get on. I said, get on where? He said, wherever you want, your option. This train's leaving. So at any rate, Larry gave us 10 seconds. We probably only used half of it. So my teammate, Billy Conner, Ren and there, and Elder had gone around the other side. So we're gonna ride on the other side there. And you guys got this side. Well, the rocket pods stick out about that far in front of the weapon sponson. It's like a little stub wing from which the pods are suspended. So it looked like a natural. We all grew up riding horses. Remember Hopalong Cassidy or Roy Roger hit the butt of that horse, flip up into the saddle? Well, Cobra, it's only about that far off the ground, so it wasn't that dramatic. But we jumped up there. The only thing we miscalculated, with a 19 rocket pod, there's not enough room between the pods to get 2 legs down in there. So we got it kind of scrunched together on the inside, gripped real hard on the outside with our legs, just like a bronc rider. And Con tapped on the side of the fuselage. Elsner tapped his rifle on the bottom of his side of the fuselage. And Larry pulled pitch, as I say. straight up. He said he went to 1,500 feet. Vietnam at nighttime, for those of you who are out there, or probably most places, pitch dark. Those villages don't have any street lights. They have no light in it at all. They're worried about getting a mortar round down their roof if they have a light showing. So we had no feeling for how high we went. Well, we were soaking wet because we'd been rolling around in the mud out there all night playing, and Larry knew that, and he was afraid of high altitude and the wind. He was going to lose us, to hypothermia. So he had the great sense to get us down to low level once he was out of small arms range. He took us down to the south. So we just swung out over the Dong Nai River, which is about 2 kilometers to our east, and headed down Tan Son Nhut Air Force Base. Actually, it's a village of Tu Duc, it's called, and there's a water treatment plant there. Alpha Troop, which was one of the ground troops, Larry was 1st Squadron 4th Cavalry. He was D Troop Air. They had Alpha, Bravo, and Charlie, and they were tanks and armored personnel carriers. They had a logger, they called it. It's like a big old Wild West wagon wheel train. He landed right in the middle of them. There's room for it. On the way to Larry picking us up, our radio operator, Gerald, still had the antenna up, and we didn't have time to unscrew it. So Elzer just took it, snapped it off the radio. So once we got there, it was about a 10-minute ride. Larry was doing 50 knots, which is about 55 miles an hour. And if y'all have ever ridden in the back of a pickup, you get a lot of wind resistance. Well, that worked in our favor. We were riding backwards, and we had that wind pushing us further into our perch. So it was Aladdin's magic carpet ride in reverse, so to speak. We got on the ground there. We couldn't talk to Larry, but we wanted to signify to him a thank you, an acknowledgement of what he'd done and the nerve it had taken to do it. So we jumped off the ship, ran around the front, just popped in a salute and a thumbs up. Good job. Thank you. And that was the last I saw Larry Taylor for 30 years. So life went on. I had 2 or 3 more missions. Larry probably had another 2 or 3 dozen missions before he went home in August. I went home just about 28 days later. So I was what we used to call, I was fairly short by that time. Would have been a whole lot shorter without Larry Taylor. He's a wonderful man. I wish all of you could have met him. Many in the crowd do have the pleasure of having known Larry. Some gone to school with him because he was a local boy. He's a legend, and rightfully so. I'd like to leave for you a few of his words. I think they're really meaningful, and they tell you they're the mark of Larry Taylor. And I think they're a tenet of leadership for all military leaders, all industrial leaders, educators, parents and grandparents. His words are these: somewhere, at some place, there are people dependent on you to make the right decision. Larry made the right decision that night, and I thank God and Captain Taylor that he did. Thank you.
Again, that's Dave Hill, the last living survivor from a 4-man LRP team who Captain Taylor rescued in a combat action in the Vietnam War that would eventually earn Taylor the Medal of Honor. And I want to thank you for listening to Tomorrowtown, Tennessee. This podcast is a production of NewsChannel 9, Fox Chattanooga, and Sinclair Broadcast Group Chattanooga. I hope you join me again real soon.